Chinese people are heartbroken as they are forced to discard millions of tons of fruit due to the collapse of the domestic agricultural market. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, as the economic crisis continues to silently permeate every corner of our daily lives, China's fruit industry has suddenly become the clearest and most authentic reflection of these deep-seated instabilities. The once bustling markets, filled with the sounds of chatter and the haggling of buyers and sellers, suddenly became eerily quiet. Those delicious fresh fruits were once considered a symbol of a bountiful harvest. Now, it could only lie there silently, piled up in the middle of the market, with no one interested in buying it and nowhere for it to be sold. Even with deep discounts, people just indifferently turn their backs. Keeping them leads to spoilage, but selling them means taking a loss. What is noteworthy is that this crisis did not originate from a pandemic, as many people mistakenly believe. That is the consequence of the resonance from a series of economic fluctuations and unstable export policies. And especially the deadly strike named Tui Quan, dealing up to 245% damage from Mai. It was like a final star, striving to shine down upon an agricultural sector already riddled with difficulties and challenges. As mentioned at the beginning of the video, the current state of China's agricultural produce, amidst these bustling markets, seems perpetually brimming with hope. Now, fruit has once again become a burden and the source of mounting sorrows. There are people who work and trade all day long, but the money they earn is a mere 35,000 to 37,000 dong. In his despair, he became so angry that he threw the fruit platter to the ground. A farmer with sorrowful eyes said that if they hadn't been pushed to the brink, he had never used a bulldozer to tear down the very earth, ton by ton, that his own hands had toiled to build. Just you alone. Another merchant also choked up and shared his feelings. People often ask me if the fruit trade has been more profitable this year. The answer is right here. The entire shipment just arrived, and before we could even unpack it, half had already begun to rot. She further shared that when encountering such stagnant inventory, she had no choice but to accept it as an unchangeable reality. T want customers to pay for fruit that wasn't. Right after that, a netizen commented that Guangxi mangoes would have an unprecedented bumper harvest this year. Except for the year the pandemic hit, this is the lowest price in all 5 years I've been in the fresh fruit trading business. He decided to buy a full 50 tons to sell to everyone at a low price and guaranteed that every fruit would be sweet, promising a refund if they weren't. However, at the largest fruit wholesale market, the price of oranges remains sadly low. Customers were sparse, while piles of oranges and meat rotted right by the roadside. Not only mangoes, but blueberries have also fallen into a similar situation. A farmer reported that in just a few days, the price of blueberries had plummeted to a quarter of what it was before. In the end, no one would even buy them, so he just fed them to the pigs to avoid wasting all the effort he'd put into raising them. T sell their goods, while buyers can. Everything is so expensive, the fruit is tiny, not worth the money. A similar slump is also occurring for those selling bee larvae, as in some places, the selling price has dropped to only around 5,000 to 5,800 VND per half kilogram. But no one can stay hungry forever, and the money from a kiss isn't enough to buy a full meal. Meanwhile, the watermelons weren't selling either, despite the price being lowered and the quality being guaranteed. The farmers lamented that not a single truck came to buy their produce. Despite their efforts to preach that the melons were sweet and delicious, in the end, all fell into silence. And the fields heavy with ripe melons, not a soul to tend to them. Difficulties are closing in from all sides, and many netizens have spoken out to warn people to be cautious. Because the watermelon may have been injected with growth stimulants, they fear that if they are not careful in their choices, the money they earn won't fill their stomachs but will instead all be spent on hospital bills. Someone recounted buying a very large melon from a 3-wheeled cart, but when they cut it open, the flesh inside was bright red and completely mushy. But its shell was so hard that it was impossible to bite through. From then on, they never bought melons sold by the roadside again, opting instead to only purchase expensive ones from reputable stores. But now, even those things have become too expensive. Victim of the crisis. First and foremost, it must be clearly stated that natural disasters are one of the most devastating forces of destruction. For farmers, working the fields is not just a livelihood, but a lifelong bond with their homeland. In the early days of February, people in northern China, I had to struggle alone with the bone-chilling cold. On February 6th, a video was widely circulated on social media. The footage captured a scene that left everyone heartbroken. At that point, the temperature was only about -10 degrees. The farmers trudged along in the bone-chilling cold, stomping your feet on the spot to keep your body warm. Even after reducing the price to the absolute minimum, the crates of ripe red chilies still sat piled high, lying still with no one coming to buy. The market area was cold and deserted, with a few silent figures standing and watching. The gloom was so profound it seemed to snuff out even the faintest glimmer of hope. As each cold front swept in, nature did not stop at the cold, it also unleashed other severe challenges upon this land. Frenzied whirlwinds and violent sandstorms. In the blink of an eye, all that effort and toil suddenly turned to ashes. Torrential rain, day after day, has left countless orchards deeply submerged in a vast expanse of water. Fruit-bearing trees are also prone to waterlogging, causing the fruit to rot right on the branch. Every borrowed penny, every day of hard labor, all of it was poured into that. However, nature only needs a single rainstorm to wash everything away. What cannot be harvested cannot be consumed. The bountiful harvest was left to waste in the fields. Like a pain that cannot be uttered, these unfinished wine tastings no longer sow the seeds of hope, but only a sad testament to the collapse of a lofty tower. Farmers sitting and harvesting rice in the vast field beneath the expansive sky. With hands clasped together, I pray with deep reverence. A living road that leaves viewers deeply moved and emotional. The greenhouses once held so many dreams. Today, this place is nothing but a pile of ruins. Additionally, in the context of the tariff-driven trade war between the United States and China, the United States has imposed an import tariff of up to 245%. For export items of Chinese origin, this very thing has quietly sown suffering for millions of farmers. It was this that quietly sowed suffering for millions of Chinese farmers. Especially for those who work in fruit tree cultivation. They are the ones most directly affected by the volatile trade policies. When tariffs are high, the value of agricultural exports will be affected. Severe decline. Fruits that were once exported to the U.S. market. Items such as apples, pears, grapes, and oranges no longer maintain their competitive advantage as they once did. Inventory levels are continuously increasing. The domestic selling price is too low. The original passage contains spelling errors and is somewhat unclear. Based on common context, it likely means the farmer poured immense sweat, effort, and dedication into plowing and investing in his land, nurturing every sprout and blade of grass. But then everything suddenly became meaningless when the export market abruptly closed. Here are some more natural and clear ways to express this, depending on the specific context. Farmers also face ever-increasing production costs. Water is scarce, and fertilizer is expensive. Each harvest becomes a gamble fraught with uncertainty. The financial burden weighed heavily on their shoulders. But they must simultaneously struggle with the burden of debt while also paying for investments in greenhouses, cold storage, and irrigation systems. Middlemen drive down prices, crops fail, and ultimately, all the disadvantages fall upon the shoulders of the toiling farmers. In addition, some have also suggested that the cause is the excessively high increase in gasoline prices and road tolls. The cost of waiting for transport vehicles, fuel, tolls, and wages for loading staff alone is a significant amount. Supermarkets make high profits, but the farmers receive very little. Now, even eating fruit has become a luxury. I'm so tempted that my mouth is watering. I really should have eaten it. But in the end, I decided to buy vitamin B2 because it was cheaper. Other opinions suggest that high transportation costs are a barrier preventing numerous types of fruit from reaching consumers outside of their production regions. The consequence is that the fruit is simply left abandoned, rotting right in the fields, including types that could still be sold. Is then sold at exorbitant prices, forcing consumers to turn their backs. A few months ago, China welcomed a bountiful harvest of golden jujubes. However, as supply far exceeded demand, causing apple prices to plummet uncontrollably, many farmers were forced to crush their own apples. Right then and there, some people shared that they didn't see any point in taking the apples home. Jujubes Aaron. The reason is often attributed to a lack of sunlight. Some other opinions suggest that the consecutive years of declining revenue are due to concerns over pesticide residues. And because the fruity flavor is increasingly winning over consumers. According to them, fruit is no longer an essential commodity, so it is necessary to cut back. Some people even question the quality of blueberries. If it's really that good, why not process it into juice or other higher value products? If they were so delicious, why let them go to waste like that? In that context, Chinese farmers, particularly specialized fruit-growing households. The pandemic is not merely a casualty in the silent trade war, but also people struggling in a market rife with injustice. They are the very people who sustain the economy's vitality. But then they were forgotten when practical interests were overshadowed by political bargaining. Over the years, the lives of Chinese people have undergone significant changes and development. The Communist Party of China consistently employs positive and constructive messaging to paint a deceptive picture of prosperity for the country. However, beneath that glossy exterior lies a reality full of instability. There, the lives of the people are filled with countless hardships and struggles. Here are some ways to rephrase the sentence above to make it clearer, more fluent, and natural while retaining the original meaning. They were also silenced. Every complaint went unheard. Any truthful depiction of society, regardless of its form, must be subjected to strict control. Against this backdrop, a young content creator on the Bilibili platform has risen to prominence. The dominant pressure has quietly undertaken a journey of shaping daily life in mainland China. No dramatic background music is needed, nor is any emotional commentary necessary. Your videos are simple yet genuine, like a mirror reflecting life itself. The lives of the people there are rustic and simple, yet filled with haunting sorrows. Among these, one cannot overlook the authentic footage depicting the lives of students at a high school. At a food factory in the rural area of Hanam, the production process of spicy sour instant noodles takes place. Or close-up shots of a life of hardship and deprivation, of the young workers laboring at the construction materials factory. I also captured the weary portraits of street vendors in Zhengzhou, and particularly, the investigation into the precarious income of farmers in western Hanam province. Everything was recorded honestly and verbatim, without any alterations or personal opinions. That's just the truth. It is for this reason that many viewers have likened it to a landmark investigation. Particularly, some older netizens even believe that, although that host did not offer any criticism at all, but every frame, every glance he captured spoke volumes without a word. A profound and sincere heart for the forgotten people. It can be said that it was a humanitarian act that needed no fanfare. That goes without saying, and it is also one of the rare, precious things that remain. In a society that is stiflingly controlled and oppressive, the most admirable aspect is his choice to depict ordinary, everyday moments. Of ordinary people, of images that seem all too familiar. But it is rarely made public. The long-concealed face of reality. However, as of January 22, this host's account. After the news site stopped updating, a netizen spoke up to share. You're still safe and have finished the filming part. However, no one truly knows what happened behind that silent door. What is noteworthy is that on the Bilibili platform, many of his videos were suddenly removed. It turns out he was summoned by the police for questioning simply for recording truthful images of everyday life. From that moment on, public opinion began to be filled with growing skepticism. Is merely recording video and audio considered a crime? Could it be that this is the authentic voice and the everyday image of the people? Now, that has become a taboo. In a moment of anger, a Chinese man living in exile did something he would come to regret. This country allows people to sing, but it does not allow them to speak the truth or write about what is real. Moreover, one should also not criticize. Anything that reflects reality will be silenced. For the truth, once exposed. The original passage appears to be missing words. Based on the context, the intended complete passage is likely. To illuminate the entire outside world, one must undergo a long process of construction. March 2023, another host named Ho Tan, and inadvertently touched upon that very taboo, only through a simple interview. On the streets of the capital, he exposed a sad reality of the elderly's lives. Of the elderly in China. Consequently, his accounts on multiple platforms have been locked, even facing the risk of complete eradication. Also during that time, a Chinese merchant In my most desperate moments, I have confided similar thoughts. Making money these days is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Those complaints surfaced just as the Lunar New Year was approaching. But in contrast, everywhere was only silence and cold. The bustling shopping scene is gone. The bustling atmosphere and the sound of joyful laughter preparing for Tet are now gone. Instead, there were market stalls devoid of customers. The goods were piled high, but no one paid them any attention. A shop owner specializing in bedding, linens, pillows, and mattresses sighed and shared. However, this year, even though Tet is very near, he hasn't sold a single set yet. That bustling, lively atmosphere isn't just found in small markets, but also extends to major commercial centers. Right in Shanghai, a place typically choked with crowds in the days leading up to the Lunar New Year. Now, only a few scattered shops remained open, looking truly deserted and quiet. Like a forgotten town, a salesperson shares with heartfelt sincerity and deep emotion. The festive atmosphere of Tet today is no longer the same natural, heart-fluttering joy it once was. It's simply the daily worry of putting food on the table and making ends meet. Based on the common context, the original passage likely intends to express the idea of expenses for cultivation. Another resident recounted with a choked voice. His family was so poor at the time that they didn't even have money for food to offer a ritual ceremony to the ancestors. This lamentable situation is not unique to Beijing. Even more, it didn't just stop in Shanghai but spread as far as Chengdu and many other cities. At wholesale markets, fruits such as cherries, oranges, and tangerines are sold in great abundance. They're fully stocked, but hardly anyone buys them. A thread author made a bitter comment. If anyone thinks doing business right before Tet is easy and advantageous, go there yourself to see it with your own eyes. A heavy, somber atmosphere hung over everything. This has left many small businesses in a weakened and vulnerable position. It just adds to the struggle and hardship. Throughout more than 10 years dedicated to the sales profession, a salesperson has shared some heartfelt reflections. He had never seen a new year as sad as the one this year. Revenue ISN. It doesn't even compare to the final few days of previous years. Taking a comprehensive look at this situation, it goes beyond merely expressing the personal anxieties and preoccupations of an individual, but also a clear testament to a serious weakening. In the final days of the year, the Chinese economy once again demonstrates a unique vitality. So where is the future of Chinese farmers headed? With Chinese farmers in the fields, but also reveals the areas that are not yet fully developed. In the government's agricultural policy, although the government has issued numerous agricultural development strategies, the reality